What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Always Hope podcast, a production of Will Wood's Faith and Marriage. This is Dr. Mario Sacasa, and I pray that this episode finds you well today. All right, young adults, well, here's your episode on learning how to navigate the complexities of friendship, romance, and life's challenges. In today's episode, I welcome Dr. Andrew and Sarah Swafford, authors of the new book, Gift and Grit, How Heroic Virtue Can Change Your Life and Relationships, published by Ascension Press. We have a wonderful conversation about the importance of finding meaning in life, learning how to navigate the oversaturation of content found online, seeing life as a story and learning the important part that you play in it. The gift of boredom. Yes, boredom is a gift. Giving space to process and think things through, learning how to develop healthy community, how grit relates to acceptance of divine providence, and the need to be patient through onerous times. Yes, we have a wonderful, wide-ranging conversation that has a lot of great tips for you to be able to digest and be able to hopefully make sense of for your own life. All right, so if you find this episode helpful, please share with one other person who you think would benefit from it. And let's get into this conversation with Dr. Andrew and Sarah Swafford. Dr. Andrew and Sarah Swafford, welcome to the Always Hope podcast. How are you two doing today?
Thank you so much for having us. It's great to be with you. We are just talking about how we can't believe it's already into the summer and all the craziness. So every time I get to this point in the summer, I'm always like, let's do it again and try to get done all the things I thought I was going to get done. But we're doing great. So thanks so much for having us.
Doing great. Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Well, I don't know what more you could do besides have a baby or what more ambitions you thought you were going to accomplish beyond that. But I think that's pretty high. It's about as good as it gets for a year. You can, if you do that.
I know that might be all I can handle this summer was having a baby. So yeah, good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I appreciate the sentiment. You know, we have 4 boys ourselves, and our oldest is home for college, and really just for a couple more weeks, and then he's off. So it is kind of weird how fast the summer flies. And you're like, oh yeah, I was going to do all this stuff, and here's my list.
I know,
but,
right?
But none of it got checked off. So anyways.
It's all right.
Well, praise the Lord. Well, I'm grateful to have you guys on the show to talk about your new book from Ascension, Gift and Grit, How Heroic Virtue Can Change Your Life and Relationships. And then just whatever sidebar discussions that we tend to have on the podcast as well. We'll see where this kind of goes. So I'm grateful for it. So just tell me a little bit about the book. What inspired you to write it, and yeah, just tell me a little bit about that before we kind of get into the weeds of it.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, we've been with I work with college students and young adults for about 15 years or so. So in some ways, it kind of bottles up what we've been saying on many occasions. I taught in a Florence program. Benedictine's got a sister campus in Florence, Italy, in spring of 2018, and we sent a professor over and about 50 students every semester. So
and the family.
Yeah. So we had
sounds like a tough
my
gig.
wife and I, with 4 kids.
Sounds really
Florence
hard.
Yeah, it was.
And we get to know students really well, but it's like you live up close. You share all the meetings, and so in some ways it kind of is the fruit of that. The title, I think for a lot of people today, life's like a story with no plot. You give your life meaning. You find a way to, find your passion, make your life meaningful. There's a line from Cardinal Ratzinger that meaning that is self-made is at the end of the day no meaning at all. What we long for is meaning that's received and received as gift, and with the call to make a gift of our lives back. So this is kind of where the title's coming from in terms of what gives our life meaning, this gift from the Lord. But then do we have the grit to kind of carry that out? Because it's, you see a lot of people who get excited about the faith, get excited about this or that vocation, but then you get into some onerous parts and some parts that look less glamorous, and what's going to kind of see me through when it's just not as fun and as exciting and as exhilarating as I maybe thought it would be.
Yeah. And we've been walking with college students. I like to joke that I'm still 25. I am not still 25. We love hanging out with college students. We live across the street from about 2,000 of them at Benedictine College where Andy teaches. And so, we hear the day in and the day out. A lot of people have asked us, like, how do you know so much about all this? I'm like, because I have a kitchen island. And we get to like really live life with these students. And I think, when we went to Italy with the college students in 2018, we were surprised. by some of the things they were struggling with. It continues to change and evolve from when, I joke we're 80s babies, so we just entered our 40s. So yeah, I have such a heart, and Swaff has such a heart for these young adults, because it was hard growing up, early 2000s. And we were part of I remember sending an email in high school, and I remember like having a Razor flip phone in college, and I didn't
you were
have
cool if you had a Razor flip phone in college.
I was super cool.
Come on, Sarah. Get on with it.
Roaming charges.
Yeah, those roaming charges with my plug-in phone, in high school. But I have such a heart for our young adult community. I don't care if you're 18 to, probably 40, you're in that young adult kind of like navigating life with a phone and navigating life with social media and texting and, now online dating. And, there's just like so much. I tell my young adults, if you ever feel like you don't know what you're doing and you feel a little lost and you don't know how to navigate this, like, you're not alone, because guess what? You're the first generation in the history of ever to have to navigate this. Right. And there is really no blueprint for that. And, so we kind of, struggled through it. And then we ourselves, we were introduced to a lot of it, but then it really started pouring on, like we actually got married in 2005. And we had never sent a text message to each other in engagement. We did long distance engagement with no FaceTime, no texting. And so, you think about how quickly things change. Yep. We've only been married 18 years, and it's a completely different ballgame on the dating spectrum of how we met and dated versus what they're up against now. And so this book really became, we wish we could go to coffee with every single person out there. We wish we could go to dinner with people. Sure. We wish we could do all of that. But this book kind of became, gosh, if we could just like sit across the table from you, sit around the island with you, these are the things that we find ourselves saying a lot. And the people around us, are like, that was really helpful. So it's like, man, if that can be helpful to anybody, we're going to throw it out there. And so that's really the fruit of this book, is we cover a lot of different topics. Yep. We're very real. There were a couple times where we were like, are we sure we want to write this? And it's like, yeah, because this is what they need to hear and what they're asking, So we kind of went there, and the feedback that we received has been like, thank you so much for being so real. Because a lot of times they don't have parents, or they don't have siblings that are kind of shooting straight with them, or even maybe that are from a faith background. We mentor a lot of couples and a lot of young adults that their family isn't practicing or doesn't have faith. And so they're not only are they kind of trying to figure out how to go all in with the Lord, but they don't have a lot of support around them in their friends and in their family. So if we can be their friends and family through this, if it, whether it's podcasts or books or, being able to see them on social media or being able to answer their questions, like, we're here for them, and we just have such a heart for them.
Yeah. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. So the subtitle should have been Gift and Grit, #adulting as a Catholic.
Kind of. Yeah, exactly.
Here's a user's guide.
Might not have thought it was enough, but yeah, exactly. That's kind of where it's at. So yeah.
This is how to make these transitions, and those transition points are I know I'm joking, and I do that a lot, so I apologize here, but just to recognize that they are real issues. And I think the title certainly speaks to that. And the two main issues that I think we are seeing, as a therapist, I have my kind of ear to the ground a little bit. I know you guys, obviously, in working with college students, see it. I counsel a lot of folks, and I do have a heart similar as you do, for this young adult population who's trying to figure these things out, who, as you said so beautifully, they're the first in the history of the world to have to navigate dating with a phone or relationships through, digital means. I mean, this has just never happened before. Chris and I, we got married in 2002. So right kind of ahead of you. And I didn't even have a phone. I mean, I remember, talk about being on college. I mean, I remember having to like schedule classes by having the book and taking down all the sections and having to make the phone call. You get in right at 8:00 to schedule classes. You remember that? That makes me sound so old. Everybody's like, what are you talking about? Right? So it's a game changer, this whole thing. And so sociologically, we're still seeing the effects of it. It's this mass social experiment that we don't quite know yet how this is all going to play out. But a couple places where we do see it playing out is exactly certainly in the title and what you guys are conveying, which is where I want us to kind of spend some time talking about, both in this crisis of meaning that we are seeing, particularly in American culture with our youth and with our young adults. This is very evident that we're experiencing this. which is why somebody like a Jordan Peterson, who is a psychologist, not Catholic, not Christian, in any respect, but it has an affinity for truth and for values, and is speaking to this head on. This crisis of meaning is kind of really what he has kind of ridden this wave on, has really put his finger on something there. So even from a secular perspective, we have to reclaim this, but we're going to talk about it as a Catholic. But then the second piece is that loss of grit, that loss of tenacity, that loss of diligence, that loss of determination, faithfulness, one could say also, if you want to throw that word in there, which can translate then to a loss of grit. And we could talk also about, I'll share some of what I know about the research surrounding that as well. And so we could just have a great conversation here. So let's talk about that first part, if we can, just the meaning. Andrew, you just shared briefly, kind of in passing, this quote from Cardinal Ratzinger, which I know you guys use in the book. Kind of say that again for us and help us unpack what exactly the good Pope is saying to us.
Yeah, the line, the meaning that is self-made is at the end of the day no meaning at all. Mm-hmm. And I think if it's only my concoction, if it's only my fabrication, if it's only something that I've kind of whipped up, it's deep down, we know it's kind of hollow. It's something that I've conjured up, I've manufactured. Whereas what we really long for is to be cast in the divine play, right? We want a role to play that matters, that isn't simply my own manipulation. Mm-hmm. It's something that I receive, and that it taps into this notion of vocation. So if again, the quote, meaning that is self-made is no meaning at all. We long to be called, chosen, commissioned, and sent on a mission. I think that's, and you mentioned Jordan Peterson. I mean, I think for a lot of, he's become a new father figure for a lot of young men, mm-hmm. That are looking for someone to like love them enough to speak the hard truths, to Absolutely. Challenge them, but to say, I get you, but you can do better. Mm-hmm. And I believe in you. I think that's what we long for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other piece of this that's really interesting, and I have to kind of remind myself and everybody else that we are the guinea pigs with this. I mean, you kind of mentioned it, like, we don't know if this is a good thing or not. It just is a thing. Right. And I think that just kind of proceeding with caution, because again, we're not haters. We don't hate social media. I joke that I would not physically be in the right spot right now if I didn't have the Maps app on my phone. Like, I check the weather.
Our 7-year-old won our fantasy football league last year.
Yeah. So like, we're not haters. Like we are a part of the culture. We can't run from it. We can't be scared of it. It's not going anywhere. I don't think we're ever going to wake up someday and be like, oh, the phones are gone. Funny, like I don't think they're going anywhere. So learning how to navigate the world with a phone is really going to be, I think, our generations, all, what we're doing right now. It's going to be the kind of the task at hand. And so one of the things that I worry about, and I think, so often I've talked about this a lot with this idea of meaning and purpose and gift, and is this whole conversation around identity and like how you see yourself, and what you think of yourself, what others think of you, how much you worry about what others think of you. I think back to my junior high and high school days, mm-hmm. and you're so insecure, you're so worried about, like, gosh, would I make the team? Like, am I good enough to be friends with you? Like, would you date me? Just like, why wouldn't you? Something's wrong with me. I mean, you question everything about who you are, what you believe, where you're going, all this idea that kind of is packaged around identity, meaning. And then you add in there the social media and the phones and the online dating and the swipe left or right. And all of this is just deeply impacting the way we view ourselves and the way we view our worth. And all of this is just, it's so messy. And then you try to add in God, and you try to add in your faith, and you try to add in what you're convicted in, and you add in what you actually believe. And most young adults just look at us and are like, I'm so overwhelmed.
Right.
Like, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what I believe. I am being asked what I think of things, and I'm scared to say a word. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to be canceled. I don't want to be dumped. I don't want to be fired. I don't want to, they literally don't know how to process what they believe, and in turn, what they believe about themselves and who they are. So it's just this enormous task. And I feel overwhelmed for them. We feel overwhelmed for, them and ourselves, and raising kids. Like, you can add that whole thing into this conversation, like how to have our kids not be scared of the world, but know how to navigate the world, like,
That's right.
How are they going to see themselves in the light of our society, in light of culture, in light of our faith? and it is really messy. And so I really think trying to just accompany each other in that community that we've been talking about, that we talk about in the book a lot, is just like, you cannot do this alone. And a lot of people are trying to do it without faith, but it is really hard to navigate this world without each other and without our Lord.
Yeah. Well, we long for validation. The question is by whom?
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. So thank you guys. I mean, you shared certainly a lot there. So let me just try to paraphrase a few things here to make sure I'm kind of hearing it right, which is that if you boil this question down of gift, I guess, or the confusion, the lack of meaning, it's kind of coming at a couple different angles. One is just the oversaturation of content and the oversaturation of information. That's what the phone is most responsible for, is that we are just completely oversaturated. You know, we talked about in the 90s, 24-hour news channels kind of emerging in the 80s and the impact of that. But now we're at a whole nother level, of course, with just the information age. And so we are oversaturated. And when we're oversaturated with content, we lose the ability to be able to discern appropriately. Like, what am I supposed to be ingesting? What's supposed to be coming in? What should I let go of? And part of the guinea pig experiment is learning how to be able to navigate the vast amount of content that we're exposed to on a regular basis. And that's a real challenge because we're just saturated. And when we're saturated, we get tired and we get overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed, we're no longer listening, you know, and that's our experience when it comes to like devices. I mean, that's my experience. Like when I go on like a professional conference, you know, when they're trying to cram in like 6 lessons in a day, you know, you go to like day 3, you're like, I'm just ready to get a coffee, or, you know, like I'm done. Right. I'm done listening. I can't pay attention anymore. You know what I mean? So we all kind of have this saturation point. And so when we reach that saturation point, there's a real challenge, because if we haven't been saturated with content that is actually helpful to us, then we're actually not hungry for the content that is. And it's like this, like we tell our kids all the time. You say, well, you know, Mom, can I have Sour Patch Kids before dinner? And you say, no, because it's going to what? It's going to ruin your dinner. I mean, that's exactly what we say, because we know you're going to fill up on Sour Patch Kids, and then you're not going to eat the real stuff that I'm making for you, that actually is going to be beneficial, nutritious for you. But because we've lost, so we're saturated, and then we're not saturated about the good things. So couple that with, as you both have been articulating, this loss of meaning as a culture as a whole. And so it's hard then to kind of sift through like God's voice. Where is he? Is he present? He's here somewhere. I know, maybe he is, I don't know. But the culture has dimmed, eclipsed in some ways, I would say, you know, God's voice and presence and light. And so there is this move then to be a post-Christian world. And so now we're like, it's like, well, what do we even mean? I mean, who's even Jesus? We could talk to kids that haven't even heard that word before. They don't even know who he is. Like, I mean, we're talking about not even a new evangelization. We're evangelization again, 101. Like, we're back to like, hey, this is Jesus, right, you know, the Son of God. We like him, you know, isn't like him, right, you know? And so recommunicating, you know, some of these truths are lost. Coupled that with, Sarah, as you indicated, you know, that a tremendous amount of fear in pursuing then these truths and communicating them and standing up for them, which is just another element of this. And so I'm just tossing different things out. What are your thoughts at, you know, just with viewing culture kind of in this lens?
Yeah. Go. Yeah.
Well, I think you're exactly right. I mean, it's hard to attain wisdom. Yeah. When you're just saturated with data points and talking points and just these factoids, and I think there's a real question of, we need to be informed citizens. I get all that, but there's a lot of things that rock our peace, that rock our joy, and we're almost more invested in these things that are far away. Than as opposed to what's right in front of us, the people right in front of us, the life we're living right in front of us. And I'm not saying we just disengage entirely, but I do. I give in my moral life class, I give a 48-hour media fast. And the students will complain when they first hear, like, what you're gonna make you do? They can make and receive phone calls. They can't text. They can't surf the web. No social media. They can make work and school emails. And if there's like a legitimate research thing, they can do that. But nothing else. No movies. No Netflix. And they will write these reflection papers, and really almost every time I'll get a slew of papers that'll say something like this. I I couldn't believe how hard the second day was. I got better sleep. My anxiety went down.
Yes.
My conversations were deeper. I couldn't believe how much everybody else was on their phone in line for coffee. Like,
Yes.
it's like, and they will often say, thank you for making me do this. I hope to do it again someday. And it's, we're not throwing the phones in the river.
You should tell them about the girl about the drawing.
Oh yeah. I mean, so just one example, this young lady, she hadn't got her schoolwork done. She had more time. And she's like, and I spent a good amount of time drawing. I used to love to draw as a child, and I never have time anymore. And she writes, I forgot how much I missed it.
Oh, mercy.
And think about how little we do for its own sake, how very infrequently we have like a hobby where we just, whatever it is, like something that's not simply utilitarian, it's not instrumental, it's not for some other end. It's like, it's because it's good, it's beautiful, and I just love to do it. And I take joy in it. Like, we don't do that as Americans we just don't do that at all anymore. And I'm speaking to myself. And I think, how much have we lost? Like, so there's the bad stuff like pornography and all that.
Sure.
What are the opportunity costs by the sheer minutes that are slipping away by this kind of idle scrolling? And one of the vices I love to teach about, and this taps into the meaning question, is sloth or chadia. And
it's our favorite deadly sin.
I mean, we think of it.
We all got one. We all got one that we like more than others.
We're like, I think this is our favorite deadly sin, at least to talk about, but for sure struggle with it too.
The tradition doesn't mean merely laziness by it. It's kind of a spiritual apathy. It's Aquinas, it's sorrow at the difficulty of the good. I want to be great, but it's too hard, and so I'm sad. And then you can't just sit in that sadness. You got to find an outlet, right? So you might be comfort food, which might be food or sex or drugs or alcohol to kind of numb the pain, or it might be the sheer kind of entertainment where 24-hour news cycle, sports news, or just the mindless scrolling on the screen. Or you might, I've seen this a lot too, you might become the workaholic, the 80-hour work week, or for younger people, I think often, I'm going to worship at the altar of the mirror, right? So fitness, physique, how I look, how I appear. So you can have a life of hyper diligence, that's
why it's not lazy.
Yeah, it looks like you're hustling like crazy, but you're just covering up that lack of meaning. And you don't want to be alone with your thoughts. And so you can look like you're really busy and still suffer from sloth.
We talk about this in the book, and everyone that's read the book is like, oh man, like when you started talking about sloth, it's so true. Cause I think it's the human condition of the 21st century. I think just human to be like, I have all of these opportunities, one, to be successful. So I feel like I have to do all these things. And then I have all these opportunities to not be alone with my thoughts. So why would I do that? Why would I value silence, or why would I value conversation with someone that might be kind of like, we talk about how the greatest gift you can give someone these days is the gift of your eyeballs. Like, to just be able to put your phone down and be like, hey, I'm here for you, to the point where I know that I have talked to young adults and like high schoolers and college students where I'm like listening to them and asking questions, and I'm making them uncomfortable because they're like, man, I've just never had anybody so like interested in my life, or like I've never had anybody listen to me like this. And they either get sometimes they get overwhelmed or they get emotional because they're like, you really care about me. Like, I can tell that you are listening to me in the way that my family doesn't even listen to me, or because everyone's on their phones or they just don't have time. And that like breaks me. It like breaks my heart because it's like, what maybe 50 years ago, what was entertainment to people. Like, I think about, I love like Little House on the Prairie, like, I love that time period, but you would get on a stagecoach and the conversation of the 5 people on the stagecoach was the entertainment for 6 hours. And so you were like looking for people to talk to. You were looking for people to share your life with. Your neighbors were the greatest things in your life. You were so thrilled when someone moved in next door and you went out and you met them. So we've just lost a lot of that human interaction, and that what really makes life so rich. So when we start to introduce our students and people we're working with to this like human depth of, like, it's really freeing to walk away from your phone sometimes. And this like in-person conversation where you're picking up on body language and, social cues. And that's one thing. I have a lot of guys that are like, can you give a talk on how to flirt again? So I think I forgot how to flirt, like girls, like guys trying to interact with each other, especially after COVID. they're like, I forgot how to interact with the opposite sex. Like, so we've been doing a lot with that. We talk about that in the book a lot. Can men and women be friends? And like how to interact with the opposite sex, how to make a friend. It sounds so wild to some people in our upper generations, but it's true. It's really true. We have to go back to the basics, like you just said.
Yeah, that's it. We'll talk about that in just a second, but to the point that you're making about, giving space for silence, I often reflect on, the story of Ignatius Loyola is that, he had this leg injury and he's in the hospital and he only has 2 books in the entire whatever castle, wherever he is. And, one is The Life of the Saints and the other is the Bible. And so out of sheer boredom, he's forced to read, one of these 2 books or both of the books. Right. And that's what leads to his conversion.
Right.
If Ignatius of Loyola was today in 2023 as a young man, like he would have been on his phone the whole time in the hospital.
Totally.
And
probably not turning to the Bible.
Probably not turning to the Bible or the Life of the Saints. Exactly.
Right.
And so this opportunity for God to speak to him would have been lost. Yeah. Now, of course, obviously, God speaks to us in other sorts of ways now, or through a post or something. He finds us. God finds us. He finds us. I get it. But but still, the point that's being made is that we're seeing this fragmentation of the person, and it has these dire effects. And so the question of meaning, as you both have been saying beautifully, is something of kind of how do we not just kind of ascribe it for ourselves, but how to reorient it and put our eyes back on the most holy things, or to use Peterson's language, on the things of the highest values. What are the things that are the most meaningful? What genuinely are, because not all values are created equal. And so we have to really kind of attain ourselves or orient ourselves or aim ourselves to that which is the greatest good. And then from there, everything else falls into place. Beautiful example that you shared, about this young girl and how this 48-hour fast, which is just 2 days. I mean, it's really not like a tall ask, it's only, it's just 2 days, but in that, the first day is detox. And the second day is like, oh, let me reconnect. Let me feel again. Let me give myself space to reconnect with elements of my life that I feel have been lost, and that we've made this excuse that I've been so busy and that I haven't had time for this. Is it really that you haven't had time for it? Or is it that you've been filling your time with useless things? Are you eating Sour Patch Kids all the time? Is it
right? Yeah, totally.
Not giving yourself space.
I think in my life, being bored is like the mother of creativity. Even just like going for a run and not putting a podcast on, how many times like an idea comes up, or like maybe, hey, this is a way you could solve that problem. Like things just kind of emerge, like as you said, in that silence. But if it's always clutter, it just, for me personally, it's a recipe for just, not being happy.
Well, the problem is that we just end up becoming shallow, in our thoughts. And that's not a judgment. That's just what it is. Because we can't process all the information at one time, and we can't solve the problems and think about them and entertain them and wrestle with them. And so if we give ourselves space, then not to get lost in our thoughts, not to get overwhelmed by anxiety, but to give ourselves space, as you said, to kind of work through some thoughts. And I'm a runner also. And so I sometimes I run with the podcast, sometimes with music, but probably 80% of the time that I'm running, it's just me and my thoughts. And that becomes a space, just like you indicated, it's time for me to kind of think through some things and work through some challenges. Maybe I had a client who had some challenging difficulties I don't quite have an answer for. Let me kind of get out and kind of give myself space. Give yourself space to think this through. So you're not just kind of bombarded all the time and not worrying about, what so-and-so said on Instagram or what so-and-so's communicating on YouTube or whatever it is. Like, those things are very much the lesser things. We can let those go and give ourselves space to actually be able to entertain that. And so, as you're saying, again, it's that if we give ourselves that room, then that's what gives space for us to be able to receive that call, for us to be able to receive that vocation, for us to be able to receive the meaning that God has for us in our life, and for us then to be able to couple our life or see our life kind of fit within this grander narrative. Hey everybody, this is Dr. Mario Sacasa. I'm taking a quick break from our conversation with Dr. Andrew and Sarah Swafford just to encourage you to check out my anxiety series. If anything that we've been talking about related to decision making is provoking a little bit of anxiety and you want to know how to be able to navigate stress in your own life, well then please check out Overcoming Stress and Anxiety, put out by the good folks at Good Catholic Media. You can head on over to goodcatholic.com to be able to purchase and enroll in that program. It is 19 lessons. It's drip content. You will get an email every single day that has written content as well as a short little video lesson. Also, we have lessons that will have exercises in it. So it's not just about learning about anxiety, but knowing skills that are going to help you be able to navigate stress and anxiety in your life. Head on over to goodcatholic.com, enroll in Overcoming Stress and Anxiety. Use code SACASA25. Again, that's SACASA25, SACASA 25, just the numbers, to be able to give you 25% off your purchase of the program. That'll help you out a little bit. That'll also help us out here at the channel as well. So check out the program. You're going to enjoy it. It's going to help you be able to navigate stress and anxiety in your life. Go to goodcatholic.com and let's get back into this conversation with Dr. Andrew and Sarah Swafford. Great stuff, guys. All right, so transition then here for a second to well, but before we get to great, I do want to talk about, Sarah, what you were talking about with friendship. I actually was surprised, not surprised, of course, that was a chapter in the book. I was like, I can't believe this actually has to be a chapter in a book to college students and young adults, like how to make friends. You know, it's like, and that's where we're at. And I understand why. I get it, because everything is done virtually, that we've lost nonverbal cues. We've lost the ability to be able to kind of carry a conversation, how to be able to talk to adults. You know, this is something that we tell our kids often. It's like, when your parents' friends are driving you somewhere, you cannot have your phone out and you need to engage in a conversation that's happening in the car. Like, this is when their friends are in the car, I can tell immediately which ones are more socially adept by their ability to be able to carry a conversation, you know, because sometimes they can't, you know, be like, so how was your day today? You know, whatever. Good.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, hey, bud, this is supposed to be a little volley here, man. This is how this goes. You know, you're supposed to kind of reciprocate that. Yeah, exactly. Right. You're supposed to go back and forth a little bit. So tell me a little bit just about what are you? How do you help people? How do you help young adults reestablish friendships and the capacity?
We started noticing this. We started noticing this in Italy. Well, we knew it was coming. Like, we knew there was kind of something going on, because again, phones just kind of started becoming the main mode of communication, right? So for a long time it was like that. Well, we went over to Italy, and that was kind of one of the things that Swaff and I, their feedback, like, again, so we had about 50 college students, and we lived over there for 3 months. And we lived in this villa, so we would have meals with them and hang out, and, you know, it was so fun. We had a blast traveling, things like that. And one of the number one things that they told us towards the end was like, how great it was for them to see us raising our kids. Like, that was the number one thing for them, was just like, because they saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, when you're traveling, you know, it's so like stressful. Oh my gosh, so we had meltdowns, we had hangry people. 2.5 to 12. Yeah, we had our kids were like 2.5 to 12. So we had a range of little kids. And so anyway, it was, you know, we felt like we were definitely on display many times. We were like, okay, how do we handle this, you know? But the number one thing that they talked about that was so helpful for them, which surprised us, and what they told us was, it was so great for them to watch me interact with the guys, the college guys, and to watch Andy interact with the college girls, because they honestly could not figure out how to interact with the opposite sex if it wasn't like, oh, I want to date you, or I'm just trying to flirt with you, or I'm trying to like figure, you know. So they were watching us have a blast with these, you know, young adults, because we're from a generation where you had to like make your own fun. You had to, you know what I mean?
Well, I think to your point, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but no, but the point even you're making about conversation is that there can be another reason to talk to girls than just because you want to hook up with them. Like, you know, it's like if that's the only reason that this conversation is happening, then of course we've completely, you know, materialized.
And what really tipped us off to this was, oh my gosh, these are like really good kids. Like these, like, you know, like we weren't hanging out with, you know, these were good a lot of them were like good, faithful kids coming from good, faithful backgrounds, and they were trying to live their faith out, and they still didn't know how to communicate with anybody. You know what I mean? So we started to kind of see that, okay, this is a problem. You know what I mean? So we asked them a lot of, we got a lot of feedback from them too, like, well, what was helpful about it? So this book is full of a lot of stories of, what we were seeing and kind of what was helpful. But when it comes to friendship, I think that the number one thing that, Chesterton, I think, has the quote where it says true friendship begins with the words "me too," where it's just like, oh my gosh, you feel this way? I can't believe you feel this way. I feel this way, and so one of the chapters we talk about in the book is called Środowisko. It's chapter number 3, and a lot of people are like, what the heck? I can't even say it. And we're like, we know it's a Polish word. We love John Paul II. He's I call him the Catholic homecoming king. He's just amazing. Everything he touches is gold, and he really knew how to accompany young adults. And so if you guys, a lot of your listeners probably have seen the black and white pictures of John Paul II up in the mountains, and so those are actually those pictures have a lot of meaning behind them, because it was during communist Poland, and it was illegal for him to be seen with young adults. It was illegal for him to be with young adults because they were so afraid of the church poisoning their young adults. And so the reason why he's not in clerics is they would call him Vujek. They would call him uncle, because they didn't want him to be arrested, and they didn't want to be arrested. A lot of the young adults didn't even share their last names because they were so afraid of the people who were spies, infiltrating their classes, infiltrating their friend groups. You didn't know who to trust.
It's real.
And, so he would take these college students up into the mountains, and they would go kayaking, and they would go, camping and hang out, and they would talk. They would literally discuss the things that we're talking about right now: relationships, faith, sex, friendship, how to interact with this opposite sex. What do you believe? What is truth? They would have these phenomenal conversations because they were unplugged. They were completely away from, for them, they didn't have to unplug from devices because they didn't exist yet, but they had to unplug from the poison in the ideologies of the day. Right. And so he took them up there, and the friendships that came from those groups, I mean, like unintentionally, you had all of these couples getting married from his groups and, from his like hanging out groups, because they just had such an amazing time together. And they got up in those mountains and they looked at each other and said, me too. I'm really struggling with this. Like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I believe. Should I believe this? Should I believe that? Should I go along with the culture? Should I not? They were really wrestling, and he accompanied them in that. And I just think that was, that's why we call it Środowisko, is that's what they called themselves. It was this little like zone of freedom that they would call this place where they could just get away. And so when we went to Italy, Swaff taught his class on the life of St. John Paul II. And in the very beginning, he goes, I hope this becomes our Środowisko. And they all looked at him like he was crazy. And by the end of it, it was just like, I mean, we all wept on the last night, like cried, like everybody came together and we cried about like, just how do we take this back? Because this is so special. Like, it's so great to get away and to unplug. And they believed us, because like we had been saying like, oh my gosh, like this, faith and, relationships and all this stuff. And you can only say it for so long until you have to experience it. And they experienced it along the way. And we actually had 3 marriages come out of those 50 college students that moved with us. That's incredible. And so it's not like Andy always says, you don't join a Środowisko to find a spouse or a vocation, but it's like this natural process of like, I am such good friends with these people. And like, you might not marry one of them, but you might get introduced to their brother or their sister or their family, or, but you create this network where for our young adults, you put your phone down, you come, into the presence of people who are trying to figure it out like you. And you can ask the hard questions, and you can find mentors to accompany you, and you can have people that say, I want to go all in with the Lord. Like, I want to go all in with my faith. I don't know what that looks like. I'm like so done with toxic friendships and toxic relationships, and my phone is on my nerves, and I don't really know what I believe in anymore. And to be able to look around and have a bunch of people go, me too. Yeah. Like, that's really where, we wanted to come alongside anybody feeling like that and say, hey, we want to walk with you. We want to accompany you. And so we tried to put all this stuff in this book and bottle that so that people don't feel like they're alone. Because that's really where the culture gets us, is that fear and isolation, and making you feel like conform or be left out, be forgotten. Right.
Or that connection only happens, through digital means. And so that only happens so far. I mean, certainly Facebook groups are helpful, obviously, in terms of connecting with people and different things for sure. But that's at the most superficial level, of friendship. And we can't confuse that for depth. So, okay. So I'll tell you what I'm thinking about right now. Are you guys movie fans? Do you guys watch movies? Well, specifically,
when we can.
Okay, so specifically, have you seen the latest Spider-Man animated film, the Across the Spider-Verse?
No, our high school kids did though. So we haven't, but they haven't. Yes. So we know a little bit through conversation.
Great. Okay. So you'll know enough to get my kind of analogy here. So after, and my audience knows this because I say this often, because I'm a therapist, after we watch a movie as a family, we always have a mandatory processing time. It's just what it is. So we always,
the theology teacher dad.
Always same thing. It's beautiful, right? It's great. So always have to have a mandatory processing time to talk about kind of what the messages were, what was being conveyed in the film, what we need to be aware of, what was really good on it, what's the deeper symbolism that's happening here. And so we had said conversation after the Spider-Man movie Across the Spider-Verse, which is a sequel to the one Into the Spider-Verse that came out, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. And so as I was thinking about it, I shared this with my kids. I said, anytime that something becomes a repeated theme in movies, you have to stop and ask, well, why? And so this issue of a multiverse has become very popular. You have it in the Marvel movies are all playing into this notion of a multiverse. The movie that just won the Academy Award, Everything Everywhere All at Once, is a whole multiverse type of movie like that. And then now we have the Spider-Man movie that also is tapping into. So we have to ask, like, well, why has this become kind of a thing of popular fiction, this idea of a multiverse? And so I said, I think it's because of this issue that we're speaking about. I said, it's because we all feel so isolated and fragmented off from one another that we're all so completely lonely that this notion of there being another version of me or somebody else who shares this same title, right, of Spider-Man, if we want to use that specifically, in another world, that gets me. And that's the brilliance of these Spider-Man movies, these most recent ones, these animated ones, I should say, is that it's not so much that there's different versions of Spider-Man, it's that there are different people who happen to become Spider-Man in their respective kind of universes. And they all carry similar crosses. They wouldn't say that, but similar stories, similar experiences, similar dilemmas, that then allows them to be able to kind of have this sense of connection. And so I think it speaks to the adolescent who is lonely and fragmented, and is lost in their own little universe of their phone, because our phones are our own universes. My algorithms on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube are going to look vastly different than yours, Sarah, and going to look vastly different than yours, Andrew. So the systems play himself in a way where it encourages kind of this sense of isolation. And so if that's all we live by, if that's all we see, then we don't know what it means to actually connect, which is what you guys have been saying. And so I communicate that to my kids. I was like, this is why this movies and these themes are so popular. And my 15-year-old, who I love all my kids, he was like, wow, Dad, that was really deep. I didn't think.
That is a compliment.
I was like, I'll take that from my teenager. Absolutely, I will.
I love that.
And so,
well, and even like you said, just being able to step back and kind of look at whether it's our media or our entertainment, like just being able for you to say that, just set like your example just speaks into this again. They're trying to navigate, and then you have young adults and adults trying to navigate all of this, and then you have a whole world that's speaking into it and trying to make money on it too.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to be so careful not to play into their hands, and so. But again, we're like, it's hard because you're like, I don't want to be scared of this stuff. I don't want everyone to, we can't all just
obviously
run from it. But you also have
most
to know.
Most of the people listening to this conversation will be on their phone. I mean, that's you know what I mean? Listen to what we're talking about right now. Most people are going to be on their phones listening to this,
I know. Yeah. Well, it was funny because even like, I love the Hallow app, the Hallow app is awesome. But I was in adoration the other day and there was a prayer that I was going to pray, and it was on the Hallow app. So I pulled out my phone and I was like, I'm playing into this, like, don't bring your phone to adoration thing, but I'm looking at the Hallow. So you're just kind of like, it's
is so somebody much judging me? Are they think I'm on texting right now?
All these things are
it's the Hallow app to everybody, the Adoration Chapel. I promise. I promise I'm not texting. Just joking.
Yeah, it's the intentionality though. Sure. I mean, like I'm doing this for this reason. I'm not just mindlessly wasting time.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah.
But
the key.
Well,
just to say in terms of this notion again, is that like it again, back to the multiverse analogy here, is that it speaks again back to this
Right.
lack of meaning, is that at best now we can come up with is this another version of our own material world, that like that's the best that
Yeah.
our imagination can come up with, is other versions of
Right.
these of the same material world or in different manifestations of it, where our faith is of course reminding us and calling us to something more. And I think that's the great gift
Totally.
here.
Yeah, and I think the key, I mean, the short of viscos and the key to great friendships is, and I think there's kind of two poles. Like on the one hand, can we build a friendship based on the
Mm-hmm.
truth? Virtuous friendship. I mean, the key to it, it's about something. It's not just running at each other, but I mean, the deeper the good that binds us, the deeper the friendship. So what is it that we have in common? Is it just like we enjoy each other, we hang out, we party together? Well, that's the depth. If we're just mutually advantageous to each other, or are we pursuing a common goal together, like Jesus Christ and eternal life? Then that deepens the friendship. So if it's based on truth like that, there's an objective framework of what it means to love
Yep.
the friend and help them get to that goal.
Yep.
But then on the other side, can we have that affective union of mind and heart where like your joys are my joys, my sorrows are your sorrows, and so there's this combination of truth and an objective goal, but also that emotional connection.
Yeah.
I think sometimes Catholics get the one, they get the truth, but that human aspect, that affective thing, is not there. And then I think for our culture, it's like it's just connectivity, but it just you do you, and I'll support whatever it is. It's like no. Real friendships rooted in the truth. You do you, informed by truth, virtue, and faith. And that's a whole different recipe for what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so having both of those, it's like in dating. I mean, just because she's Catholic doesn't mean you're going to like her, but hey, there's a start. Okay. Like at least we have some union, you have to have some commonality, with regards to values and direction. But there has to be more than that also, for this thing to actually kind of move forward and materialize. So, okay, so let's shift gears here for the time that we have. Been wonderful talking about relationships, meaning. Let's talk a little bit about grit and that aspect that you guys discuss in the book. And so how would you define grit? How do you articulate? How do you understand it?
Yeah, I mean, so grit has gotten some traction in recent years, like Angela Duckworth's book and
yeah.
things.
I like her, and I have some thoughts about hers that I'll offer here also.
No, it's great stuff. What we mean by grit is more than just kind of a stoic grit your teeth, white knuckle it. And I think the key, it's you can think of it also the virtue of patience. Traditionally thought of as a sub virtue of courage. And there's the courage of a soldier to attack and engage evil, but there's also the courage of a martyr who can persevere through an evil that can't be removed. So what we mean by kind of heroic grit or supernatural grit or grit informed by faith isn't just grit your teeth and bear it, but something that really allows, we draw from Walter Chizik, Father Chizik. I think Ignatius's rule 5 in terms of overcoming desolation, where in a time of desolation, never make a spiritual change. So there's going to be times in our life, there's situations where we need to get out of, right? Abuse, things like that. Like you absolutely need to remove yourself from that situation. But there's other times where, I feel like the Lord's called me here, but it's not as glamorous as I thought it would be. It gets kind of onerous. And for Chizik, it might be good to start there. He dreamed about being a missionary to communist Russia. Make a long story short, he ends up in a Siberian, communist prison camp for 15 years. And it's only in the prison camp that he's able to exercise, priestly ministry. And he could have been like, why did I ever come here? What was I thinking? My life's a complete joke. But he didn't. And he came to see those really tragedies mysteriously in light of faith as, if you will, this is very radical, but gifts from the Father that he would never have chosen for himself, that his call at that moment was to embrace and accept and offer as a holy sacrifice back to the Lord. And the amazing thing is he did that with joy and peace and confidence. And I'm like, if he can do that there, then I can do that changing a diaper. Then I can do that when I'm not my team's MVP on my, ministry or whatever. And so the grit that we're getting at really is to see these onerous moments, if that's where the Lord has called us, right? So we have to discern this, but if that's where the Lord has called us, to see even these things that we maybe wouldn't have chosen for ourselves, as gifts, maybe even in quotes, but as gifts from the Lord, that our task then in that moment is to embrace, even with gratitude and offer them back as a sacrifice. And I think that to do that is at least a step toward being able to do those things with joy and gratitude. And I think about our Lord's words on anxiety, right? And there's different kinds of anxiety. But in my experience, when I've been so overcome by my worries, my issues, my concerns, I might be physically in the same room, but I'm not present. I'm not there. I'm not really free to love. And so the grit we're getting at is, I think, to be able to persevere through the moments in our vocations, our lives that seem onerous, seem inconvenient, seem like this is not what I thought I signed up for, but to continue to love in the midst of that, continue to engage that with joy, and even offer that back to the Lord as a holy sacrifice that isn't something like, gosh, I just, one of the things about sloth, the ancient monks would say, is hatred of place. You hate where you are physically, but you hate where you are in your state in life. And the grass is always greener on the other side. And
the noonday devil, as you referred to earlier, as shady.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but the grass is so often greener where you water it. And we have to discern this. But if the Lord has called us, we need to expect those movements of consolation, desolation, the ups and downs. And I think where the grit part's coming from for us is working with young people. Sometimes there's great enthusiasm. I want to be great. I want to go all in. And then it hits a snag. And it's like, maybe not.
Just kidding.
And so it's like the meaning, like having that real meaning in your life, it fuels grit. Because like if you feel like it's purposeless, it's got no meaning. It's like, it doesn't take much to knock you off the horse. If you've got a real sense of meaning and purpose, it'll fuel grit.
Absolutely.
But the real heroic part, I think, is when we can do it consistently over the long haul, and to do it with joy.
I think Angela Duckworth would agree with everything you said, in terms of just the little bit that I know. Her research is specifically on kind of the psychology of achievement and what creates achievement. And so achievement would be kind of talent times grit, and so it's both and, like, just because you're talented, you guys I know both have an athletic background. And so just because you're the most talented kid in the world doesn't mean you have the grit to actually move forward with it. And so, but the research there, as I understand it, is a little bit more domain specific. And so we're talking about achievement in a particular area. And so those who achieve at West Point, or those who achieve in high school, I mean, there certainly is grit is kind of a character element, but it is related to kind of achievement. And I think that's the research she's offering specifically. I think what you guys are speaking about isn't so much just about domain specific, but kind of like a life project. It's kind of like a little overarching, which is why we're talking about grit informed by faith, which is to say, yes, we can be gritty on the ball field, and it's good to be gritty on the ball field. Like you be diligent with your studies, do the hard work, do the work that nobody wants to do. The deliberate, what's the phrase that she uses here? It's called, deliberate practice, this notion of there's going to be things that you have to be very intentional you want to work on that nobody else is going to do. But if you can do this and not just do it haphazardly, but actually achieve perfection on this, you're going to succeed, with it. But all of that, of course, is just getting at domains, again, of success when it comes to, I don't want to say worldly things because I don't want to diminish it in any way. Like you're a professor, you want to be a good professor. You're a speaker, you want to be a good speaker. You know what I mean? Like I'm a therapist, I want to be a good therapist. So I want to excel in the place that God has called me to excel in. You know what I mean? Like it's not that I just want to forget about it. Like I actually want to be really good at the job that I think God has asked me to do. Because if I'm really good at this job, then that also is a manifestation of my faithfulness to him. There's a parable, the talents, you know what I mean? Like that's like, the wicked one is not, he doesn't steal the master's money. He just doesn't do anything with it. I mean, so there's something to be said about recognizing that we can see in the larger picture how we want to grow in faith, and what it means to be gritty in that regard. But the particular manifestation of that, of course, is going to take its own individual kind of character and flavor.
See, this was key to my conversion. I mean, I grew up Catholic, kind of a name only, but seeing how like you learn about virtue and the ancient teachers on virtue, like it's like a craft, right? I mean, it's, and I was able to translate what I thought about athletics or training. It's like, what does that mean in the game of life? So I think, what you're hitting at is exactly right. It's like, what does it mean to translate all those things that we know to be true in these other specific domains to the craft or the art of life, of living well.
One of the things we tell young adults a lot of times is like, your vocation is not a puzzle to be solved, but a gift to be received. And I think a lot of times young adults get really, stressed out about how, like my vocation, what is God calling me to? I got to figure this out. I can't screw this up, and it almost is debilitating. Right. They just like give up. They're like, I don't want to mess this up. And this generation really struggled. Your cardinal sin to this generation is showing weakness or failure.
Yeah.
Having any type of failure. Right. And so they're like, I don't want to screw up the biggest thing that could happen.
Well, because it's all recorded. It's like, we would just goof around in high school and like nobody knew anything about it. It was a joke. Now, if you mess up, like it's terrifying to your point, it's like,
totally. And
redemption.
There's there's a lot. Exactly. And so when we tell this college students this, we're like, this is a gift to be received. And the question becomes, how do you want to spend your love? Like you're going to suffer and you're going to sacrifice. If you want a vocation, if you want any type of, even if you in the secular world, if you want to achieve, Michael Phelps did not suffer.
Oh, absolutely.
That's my one annoyance with the Olympics is like, you literally just see them doing the like great thing,
right.
but they don't show like the hours and hours and hours of training. And
it's boring. It's boring. We don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch it.
I know. You don't want to watch the bad part, right?
It's boring. Practice? We're talking about practice? Come on, Allen Iverson. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, and then also these girls were telling me one time about this phenomena of like, now you have like the Kardashians who are famous and rich and for doing literally nothing.
Well,
like they have
Kim got famous. No offense, Kim got famous for all the wrong reasons. I mean,
right. But it's not because, so now everyone thinks they can be rich and famous for nothing. Right. And then also you have all of these people who are like, the only way I'm going to be anyone is if I'm seen, noticed, famous. Right. And then you have this whole group of people over here called, us, who are like Christians and Catholics who are like, no, the best way to be happy is to give your life away. And like, to be able to like, to try to fathom this is so hard for this generation. Cause it's like, wait, what? My life isn't about me. And I'm supposed to like figure out how I want to spend my love. And I'm going to be free and happy doing this. Like what? And so that's what this book was really trying to get after is, you're going to be fed a lot of lies and you're going to be fed a lot of things that you're going to have to sort through, and you're going to have to step out and trust at some point that we're not coming from this is just another option for you because you have a lot of choices and we want you to be free and we want you to be whole and we want you to be healing and we want you to be happy and we want you to be holy. And yes, this all is a lot of work and there's sacrifice and suffering involved, but take it from a bunch of people who have tried all the other ways.
Right.
And this is truly a path that's going to lead you to where you want to go. But it might be difficult, to step out in faith and take it and go for it.
So just to bring back Angela Duckworth, if I can, for a minute, she's part of this larger kind of umbrella of psychology called positive psychology. And this branch of psychology has emerged in the last 20 years, thanks in large part to a guy by the name of Martin Seligman, who was asking a very similar question, which is that psychology almost existed in its first inception, right, in its first wave, I guess, of getting people from negative to healthy, but never asked the question, how do we get from healthy to flourishing? What does flourishing actually look like? And where he went is exactly, I think, what you were kind of alluding to, Andrew, which is that we get to the virtues, and we have to understand the virtuous life as the meaningful life. And so Angela Duckworth, again, not knowing her, but just being a little familiar with her research, and when she's talking about grit, she makes it clear that it's the pleasure aspect of the hedonic element of life is inverted related, with grit. Like it's like gritty people know how to make those sacrifices to the point that you're making. And where you see kind of the correlations are with meaning and also with engagement. And so is the task that you're doing engaging? Is it something that it captures your attention, and even if it's not something that's all meaningful, but if it's something that at least captures your imagination, it's your attention, then go for it. But the things that are meaningful are also important. Those are the things that we can value, we can work towards. So all of that, I think, is absolutely beautiful. But I do, of course, want to spend just a little more time talking about Walter Chizik. He's one of my greats. I'm a fanboy, if we can say that, of the Saints, and absolutely love his work. And had the opportunity to go to his graveside in Pennsylvania and be able to pray for a little bit there. And just like a good Catholic, I took some snippings of grass from his graveside and put it in my book, He Leadeth Me, because I was just blown away. I mean, his story is beautiful. It really, Speaking of meaning, it was very meaningful for me at the time of my life where I was really struggling with a lot of questions. The Lord brought Walter Chiswick, right into my life right when I needed him.
Oh, praise God.
So very grateful for that. So the story that you were sharing, is exactly it, which is that in his time, the conclusion that he comes to when he's in the gulags is that, one of many, but this is one of the things that gives him a sense of peace, is that God loved these these prisoners so much that he would send them a priest. And who am I to have not been that priest called? Like, sweet Jesus. You talk about like that level of humility, you know what I mean? And that level of trust and providence in God's grace that guides us. And so if we can see that providence playing itself out, if we can recognize that maybe I'm just being a little fickle, again, discernment will clear itself out. If you're in a bad relationship, get out. And the way you discern whether or not it's a bad relationship is, well, you start talking about the concerns and issues, you present them, give people an opportunity to grow. And if after 3-6 months there isn't any growth, there's been no real change, and you're pretty much stuck at square one, well, it ain't changing. And so then at that point, you have to discern and say, well, I've given this enough time. I have enough data, so to speak, to be able to make a decision, make your decision and move on. So
marriage won't change.
Marriage won't change that. People talk about like, oh, well, the grace of the sacrament heals all things. No, it doesn't. I'm saying that as a Catholic and believes in the sacraments of grace. Yeah. Keep going.
We always joke that any problems you have before marriage, they don't go away. They just get magnified.
Yes.
So you have to really deal with those things. And that's part of this discerning well, like you just said, it's so important.
But that's the problem, is that the way that we've lost grit is that we've lost, as we've said earlier, dedication, commitment. And so again, not saying that there aren't bad situations you have to get out of. Okay, you do. All right, I'm going to put that aside for a second. But what I think the common trend in our society isn't that. It's rather that we're too quick to abandon projects. And we're too quick to or rather we have a really hard time letting go of options. And this generation, like it used to be for us, like we would find security in those kind of groups, having commitments, having plans set. But now it's like the opposite. The way you find security is in keeping your options open. So that even comes to like a Saturday where it's like I've gotten 3 invites to something. I haven't made a decision about anything yet. I'm going to kind of weigh the options until I figure out what's the best to do. Or if I'm really a people pleaser, I'm going to go to all 3 of them for about 30 minutes. So I can kind of just show up and say that I was at all of it, but never actually have a really good time at any of it.
There was a damning quote I came across a few years ago, but it's damning, but it's like, oh my gosh. And it went like this: a younger generation is going to die alone, without the spouse they never married, without the kids they never had, and without the God they never knew.
Wow, terrifying.
And my heart just broke, because I think, as you say, keep my options open, but that's a facade, right? I mean, like, not to decide after time goes by is to decide, because life is going to pass you by. And I think you nailed it with commitment. I think grit and meaning kind of come together with you're not going to have meaning in your life until you commit. And if you commit to the highest things, you might even think, so much of our culture is so individualistic. It's been like that for a long time. We're just little atomized individuals. We don't think in terms of solidarity and relationally. What would it mean to really commit myself to someone, to whether it's friendship, a spouse, children, and to see the meaning of my life most predominantly wrapped up there, not just in what I do. We love what we do. We love what we do, but who you marry, I mean, for all our listeners out there, I think the married ones would attest this as well. I mean, who you marry is going to be far more important than what job you do in terms of the quality of your life, what it looks like. Who you choose to associate your life with for the rest of your life.
And then the friends you put around you to support you in that before and after marriage. I mean, both huge, like unbelievably important, because you're going to start seeing the world the way they do.
That's it. So the question of commitment kind of brings our conversation to a close here, which is beautiful, which is to say that if we can discern well, which means we have to give ourselves space to actually do the work of discernment. It means we have to have silence and the capacity to be able to listen to God and give ourselves space to kind of work with the data and the information that we're receiving in prayer and also in kind of our natural experiences. But then once we kind of get that clarity, we go and we commit ourselves to that until otherwise, noted. And that process of commitment is going to help you. And the challenges that emerge along the way aren't always obstacles. And I think you guys said this in the book, and I thought this was kind of funny. You said that you talk about breakups, and you said something to the effect of like, basically the whole book is kind of like how to get over a breakup or something to this, I forget. I know I'm paraphrasing. And I think I know what you meant, which is that like hardships are going to happen. It's not just about the breakup specifically, but disappointments are going to happen in life. Things that we discern are going to blow up in our face. Things that we thought God was calling us to sometimes don't always work out. And in those moments, what do? Do we abandon the whole project, or do we rediscern and say, okay, sift through this, and what of this was genuinely from me, and what genuinely is something that needed to die off? And how then can I continue to move forward with this project or this mission or family or whatever that you've put before me, to continue to be responsible to the things that you're asking me to do? And that level of commitment, it's what you guys are speaking about, with regards to this kind of heroic, faith-infused grit. Yeah. Well, praise the Lord. Well, Sarah and Andrew, I've been so grateful to have you guys on the show. If people are interested in getting the book, what's the best way they can do that, or learning more about the good work that you guys offer? How can they do that?
Yeah, we went ahead and a couple of years ago made the website, theswaffords.com, just to make it like a one-stop place. A lot of times people are looking for gift and grit, dating, relationships, emotional virtue, things like that. Sometimes they're looking for all the good work that Swaff has done on the Bible with Ascension, the Great Adventure Bible, and Romans and Hebrews. And we did what we believe with Ascension, went over to Rome and did 10 days walking through the creed, through the churches over there. So all that is there at theswaffords.com. We just made it easy, and we love personalizing books. So if you order it on our website, we can like put your name on it and write you a note, and we love doing that for gifts and things like that. And so yeah, it's all over there on the website. And we also have our email there. So if you want to get in touch with us, we're there as well.
That's fantastic. Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes for people to be able to access that easily. And so final question to ask all my first time guests, and I'd love for each of you to ask this individually if you can. What gives you hope?
Oh, love it. Man, that could be another podcast.
It could.
But the obvious answer is Jesus Christ. But you mentioned John Paul II. He's one of my heroes. And I think what often gives me hope personally, and I think you could look at this with other lives of other people, is when you look back at times that looked rough, and it's like, gosh, what was I know how I felt then. And I look back and I see how the Lord brought me through that. And that can be kind of a galvanizing thing for the future. If he did it then, he'll do it again. And I look back at John Paul II's life, and he could have just thrown in the towel, like again and again. Chiswick too, again and again and again. And I think fundamentally hope is not happy clappy optimism. It's this sense that despite appearances of the contrary, God is at work.
Amen.
The Joseph narrative, God is at work, and I'm not made for this life. Ultimately, like my end, as good as this life is, as rich and wonderful as it is, it's not my final destination. And I think if we don't maintain those two things, that God is always at work, even if it feels different, and that I'm ultimately made for something more, if we put our stock here, it's going to fold. But if you have that, I think people like Chiswick had that, JP2 had that. I pray that I have that can see us through. It has seen many saints through the darkest of times. And if it can be done for them and they can do it, then that gives us hope that we can do it now too.
Beautiful answer. Sarah?
That was really beautifully put. That's why I usually try to go before Swaff, so that
I can edit it. I can edit it. I can cut it. I can go backwards.
I married up, my friend. I married
like 2 or 3 ones up. Yeah, that's my answer too. I would say like all of that. We ended the book with a chapter called Living with Eternity in Mind. And just that idea of, I think it's so easy for us all to feel like this, like every moment, like this is the only life that matters, and that we have to be comfortable and we have to be successful and, all that stuff. And then you start thinking about like, I'm going to die, like everybody's going to die. And, just really that idea of hope, like, what do you live for? And we talk a lot about, making decisions like, okay, well, if we were on our deathbed, looking back, what would this decision, how do we want to have made this decision? And how are we spending our time and things like that? So I just love everything Swaff just said. And also just that idea of living with eternity in mind. Like, we are not made for this world. That helps me to prioritize and redirect and have the things I should be, like, again, the hope I should have and the hope that I want to have. The last thing I would say about hope, though, that gives me hope is, we are really blessed. It is so easy to sit around and talk about everything that's going wrong and everything that sucks and everything that's just like, we're in trouble, and just get overwhelmed. And then, like, God does these little things. Like, I got up and went to adoration one morning early. I couldn't sleep. And I went to adoration at our local church. We live right across the street. And I walked in and there were literally 20 college guys. It was like 5:55 in the morning. And I walked in and there was like a ton of college men and women too. But there was just, this whole adoration chapel was full. Yeah. And I just was like, okay, people, you know what I mean? Like, the hope is there. And, we are meeting so many young adults that are on fire. We're meeting so many families that are on fire. So just have hope. It's going to be all right. The church has seen so many dark days. But if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? So have hope, and let's be part of the solution and not the problem. Amen.
Amen. Well, beautiful answers, both of you. Thank you guys so much. Well, God bless you both and the good work you guys are doing. So thanks for joining me on the show today.
Thanks
God
for
bless you.
having
Yeah,
us.
this has been great. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Well, that does it for my conversation with Dr. Andrew and Sarah Swafford. I'm so grateful for them giving me time to be able to talk through this book that they've written and just the wonderful work that they do, ministering to college students and to young adults through their public apostolate and ministry and work. So if you've enjoyed the conversation, again, I ask you please to share it with one other person you think would benefit from it. Or please, what really does help this channel out a lot is the comments and the ratings and reviews, and so on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify specifically. If this episode has blessed you, or if previous episodes of the Always So podcast have blessed you in some way, leave a rating, write a review. Those things do mean a lot to me personally. I love being able to hear from my listeners, knowing how the show is helping people. It also helps other people to be able to know what the show is about and how it can be helpful. Or if you have comments that you want to share in a more public forum, let's have a conversation about it. Have thoughts? Please join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn at Dr. Mario Sacasa. On each of those channels, you can also learn more. I have clips and tips as well that I am offering, as well as just kind of knowing where I'm at and where I'll be speaking. And so again, love being able to interact with my listeners and to be able to provide content that's going to help you navigate the challenges and the complexities of life. If you're struggling with hope, if you want to know how to be able to live a better life, you want to know how faith and psychology can help you to live a better life, then you have found the right place. You've found the podcast that's helping you. Reach out also on the channels as well, social media channels that we have at Dr. Mario Sacasa, Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as Instagram, to get more great content to be able to help you navigate those challenges and those complexities that you're experiencing. So God bless you all. Have yourselves a wonderful day.